How to handle the Trump administration? That is the big question here in Canada. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. There are so many ways you could look at the election. You could be pulling your hair out like some Canadian pundits and commentators, just screaming all the time that Donald Trump is president and you can't believe it. Or you can get down to business and just deal with the fact that he is the incoming president, the president-elect, and someone that Canada has to find a way to work with. How do we do that? The Trudeau government, I'm not sure that they're on the right track. Let's bring in someone who does know how to deal with the Trump administration because he's done it before. James Villeneuve is a senior business advisor at Fasken. He's a former executive at Anheuser-Busch InBev and was Canada's consul general from 2014 to 2018. So he joins me now here in Toronto. James, thanks for the time.
You're welcome. Good to talk to you.
Well, you were appointed by Stephen Harper. You dealt with the Obama administration. You were consul general down in LA. Let's explain that. You looked after Canada's interests in California, Nevada, Arizona, but you dealt with the end of the Obama administration and then the Trump administration. What did we do right last time? What did we do wrong last time that we should avoid now that Trump's coming back?
Well, I think one of the things when it happened, there was, I would describe it as a bit of shock in the system. It was unexpected, right? The first Trump win. A little different this time. I think we could see that not necessarily that we thought he was going to win, but that he had a good possibility of winning. So we realized what's happening. Some of the things we did right last time, I think that there was a very clear focus on highlighting not just the relationship, but the economic relationship between Canada and the United States, and to drive it down as deep as you possibly could. So I'll just give you an example. One of the things we did, we created a thing called the $250 million Club, which was basically a recognition to members of Congress that exported $250 million to Canada. And why that was good is most of these members of Congress did not realize that this was happening. And then all of a sudden, when the trade discussions and tariffs got going, they were weighing in on various committees that were there. So that's where you make it very...
You told me the story once about guy in Nevada.
Yeah, Mark.
So tell me that story, because he ended up on a committee, right?
Oh, yeah. He was on the finance committee, Nevada 1, which is the Reno area. He had, out of his district, approximately $700 million plus being exported to Canada, and he had no clue. And then we drilled it down even further so that there was companies. We had identified the companies that were exporting, and then he's like, wow, my sister works at that one. So all of a sudden, there's an interest for them to weigh in when there's discussions on tariffs, whether that be with the White House or the Commerce Secretary or whomever the case may be. They all have voices, right? And they will weigh in as need be, but you got to prime the pump with them and constantly work this. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of new members of Congress coming in, new members of the Senate. And so that will be a very important job for Canada to raise our profile, raise awareness. And I go down to the transactional natures of this, not the we're good friends, you like to visit Vancouver, that kind of stuff. It really becomes transactional. So President Trump is transactional. That's how he operates, right? That's what he's done.
So meet him where he is. I mean, that's my view of how you deal with politicians. It's okay. Who are they?
Right.
What concerns them? What do they want?
Yeah.
How do we deliver in a way that gets us what we want?
Right. And and you're right, Brian. And he's, made it very clear what his priorities are. It's to grow the economy. It's to grow American jobs. It's to bring stuff back home, whatever the case may be, however you define that. And so we need to play on what we bring to the table on this.
Now, there are messages that we've put out in the past. You've told me about meeting with Wilbur Ross, who was the Commerce Secretary early on, and the issue of softwood lumber, perennial fight with the Americans. And our argument has been the same. Well, if you put tariffs on our lumber, it makes your homes more expensive. Tell me that story about yourself and the minister at the time trying to explain that to Ross and how we reacted.
Well, it was, I forget the number we had used. It was $4,000 to the cost of a home, something like that. And he just sort of laughed, going, well, so what? Right. So let's, so what? Maybe when you're worth what you're worth, but to the average person. But again, those are the kind of things you learn. And part of it would be we need to readjust our messages going forward. And again, I'll just throw another one at you that I think, because
well, if they're worried about keeping jobs in their pulp mills,
yes,
then that $4,000 message doesn't apply. So you've got to find a different one.
Right. And on that one, the traditional argument has always been that, we're subsidizing lumber because it's coming from Crown land. Most of theirs is from private pulp mills. But that'll be an ongoing issue. There's many other issues that are going to happen. But, we just got to continue to work those messages and refine.
The issue of tariffs, I keep pointing out that in 2017, just a few months after Trump was inaugurated, the Americans approached the Trudeau government and said, we've got a problem with Chinese aluminum and steel being dumped in Canada and then shipped to the United States as if it's a Canadian product, transshipment. Right. And Trudeau government did nothing for a year until after the tariffs were put in. They didn't even respond, is my understanding. And so we got hit with tariffs that we could have avoided. And Wilbur Ross appeared before Congress and explained, they could have avoided this. He said they're complaining wildly now, but they could have avoided it if they were doing then what they're doing now, which was controlling Chinese dumping. Prime Minister Trudeau is talking about Chinese overcapacity. That's what they're calling it now. He's obviously attuned to the idea now. How much do we have to spend time understanding what's driving the Americans as they're looking at tariffs? Because I think that we can be on the right side of the tariff wall unless we somehow do something stupid and get linked in with China.
Well, I think you're 100% right on that. The target, I think, for most of this tariff talk is going to be China. And if you're interacting with them, whether it's flow throughs, whatever you want to call it, they've already referenced Mexico. Doug Ford referenced Mexico this week in terms of a focus and that we shouldn't be doing this. So the government will have to be aware of that. And if we don't want our industries to get caught in this, we have to be hypersensitive to that, right? And whether we're taking actions or not, we need to.
What did you make of Ford's musings that either Mexico plays ball or they're not invited to the table and they're out of NAFTA or CUSMA or whatever we're calling it these days?
I actually think in some ways for Premier Ford, it was a good message to deliver. I think it puts people on notice that they need to play ball. They're going to be the focus of a lot of things, which is going to be obviously the southern border is going to be a focus. The sheer amount of drugs that are coming through the southern border, a lot of it coming from China, actually into Mexico, into the United States. So for the Premier to articulate that, and given the fact that Ontario is by far the largest chunk of imports and exports in this country, he should want to defend it and defend Ontario. And if nothing else, I mean, it's not going to change everything tomorrow morning, but I think it puts people on notice that the Premier of Ontario is going to defend the province of Ontario. So it's a good call.
The new border czar is a guy named Tom Homan. I know you've seen his statements. He is a guy who knows the Canadian border well. He's from West Carthage, New York, which is just south of Kingston, and he's already put us on notice. I imagine in a little while, the Trudeau government will be walking around sounding like Cato the Elder, saying Carthage must be destroyed because of this guy, because he is going to cause us headaches. But not incorrectly. There is a problem. And, I've referenced them in past columns. Last year, more than 400 people on the terror watch list were apprehended crossing the Canada-US border. More than double what they apprehended from the terror watch list trying to cross the southern border. The number of people over the last 12 months apprehended crossing illegally is more than the past 17 years combined.
Yeah.
At first it was a lot of Mexicans flying up to Canada, then going down. Now it's Indian nationals, mostly young single men, being apprehended after they come to Canada on a student visa or a work visa. They're crossing into the US illegally. He knows all this. He knows it well. He's promising resources. How do they handle that other than this bizarre cabinet committee, which I think it makes us look like we're in a panic that Trump got elected? How do we handle it other than that and just stating over and over again, like Chrystia Freeland does, we take the border very, very seriously?
Well, whatever we have to do to stop that, we better be doing it. If not, they're going to stop it for us. And what that will mean, I mean, take out illegal people crossing the border, which needs to stop, is everyday travelers that need to get across for business, for work, for whatever the case may be, may feel the effects of this. And one of the things we're going to have to do as a country, I believe, is really work on the economic messages and work with governors, members of Congress that benefit from people like you and I going down to southern places and spending money, so that we don't get caught in the crossfire of we're adding additional checks to every border posting. We're reviewing everybody's Nexus cards. We're doing different things to make the border thicker, which is definitely something we do not want to have as an economy for a whole bunch of different reasons. And I think I mentioned this to you before, Brian, that just one example, 70% of the foreign visitors into Las Vegas are Canadian in a given year. So it's
70%?
70. So it is not in the interest of the governor of Nevada, who was just up here recently, who met with Doug Ford, to have that thickened in terms of.
I met with him as well. Very nice guy.
Right. Governor Lombardo. And he's a Republican and he backed President Trump hard. So and there's many of those people. Marco Rubio, the soon to be Secretary of State, has supported legislation to increase Canadians' time in Florida to 8 months from 6 months because of the economic impact of that in the state of Florida. So we have friends and allies that know the importance of Canada and what it means to the economy of the United States and our people traveling there. But it's not a right for us to go in there. It's a privilege. And they will tell you that too. People in border security, I've met with many times. So we need to clean up our act on people using this country to get into their place and demonstrate whatever we have to do that. And then work on the other message that we want the good guys, the good men and women, to be able to go back and forth as freely as possible.
Yeah, getting that border thickened. I was just down in Arizona a little while ago, and the tourism folks there were talking about how important the Canadian market is. Yeah. They're constantly courting people from the Canadian market to go down there. Mm-hmm. They're excited about direct flights, more direct flights from Toronto. So, I mean, you've got those allies, you've got to use them, but you've got to do the hard work as well, not just the soft talk. And the hard work is, Tom Homan is saying he's going to put more people patrolling on their side. Well, we need to have more people on our side.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. And whatever our process is for approving visas into the country and for allowing people to get out, whether it be airlines or crossing land borders, we need to toughen that up ourselves, right? And invest whatever is required to do that. It's just too important for us as a country. Even moving goods and services that trucks can get in and out quicker. We need to really take that seriously, because it's going to have a massive economic impact on us if we don't deal with this. Just another stat that I saw when I was Consul General, this may have changed now, but we get our Nexus cards confiscated roughly 10-1 versus Canadians do, versus Americans having their global entry cards taken by us. So they're paying attention to this, and they have been for quite a while. So we just need to be very, and we'll argue about that. We go and complain about it, saying it's not fair that your border guards are being too tough on us. But we just need to take that serious, and that could be a communication effort with Canadians, right, where we kind of talk to them and let them know that this is what's at stake in this, that you really got to take this seriously if you want to enter the United States. One other little story that I can tell you about when I was consul general about people coming to Canada, so refugees. We, at that time, there was a spike in refugee people coming to Canada, and this was pre the third party agreement being toughened up. We went to the various consulates in Los Angeles, to the El Salvadorian consulate, the Guatemalan consulate, the Mexican consulates, and basically told them in no uncertain terms that they need to communicate with their citizen that Canada is not open. There are ways to get into Canada. We want immigrants. We want people to come in legally, but coming in illegally is not going to happen. That did have some effect because they would spread that out to people. People like Haiti, there was no consulates, but we did send people to their churches, right, to speak to people, to say, this is what happens if you come to Canada, that it's not as simple as walking through the door. I think we're going to have to dial that level of communication up as well, and soon, with various communities in the United States. Because if you're faced with, what you would describe as certain deportation, right, you're going to either look to find ways to avoid being caught in the US, or you're going to look for alternatives, in Canada being one of them. So I think we're going to have to dial that up too. Whatever form of communication plan that is, we need to do it.
It's going to be an interesting 4 years, James. I'm sure we'll talk about this again.
We will, Brian.
Let us know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Share this on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.